There's a specific moment I want you to picture. It's late. Someone sat on the edge of their bed, phone glowing, thumb hovering over one of those "how much can I borrow" calculators. They put in their salary, they put in their savings, and the little number that comes back is so far from the price of an actual flat that they don't even feel sad about it. They just quietly close the tab and open something else. No drama, no breakdown. Just a small, calm decision to stop trying. That's not laziness. That's maths. And a whole generation is doing that maths and reaching the same answer. This is Proper Pence, where we talk about money with real UK numbers. If you want the honest version of what's happening to your generation and your money, not the doom, not the lecture, hit subscribe and give this one a thumbs up because it genuinely helps. Right, let's talk about why so many young people have stopped even trying to buy a home. Whether they're right to, and this is the important bit, what the smarter ones are quietly doing instead. First, let's kill a myth before it does any damage. This is not a video about avocado toast. It's not about coffees. Nobody talked their way out of a house deposit one flat white at a time. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're selling you a feeling, not a fact. So let's look at what actually changed. Go back to the year 2000. If you were between 25 and 34, there was a decent chance you owned your home. About 59% of that age group did at the peak. Fast forward to 2022, and that number had fallen to 39%. That's the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and it's not a small wobble. That's roughly 1 in 5 people in that age group who owned a home a generation ago and now simply don't. And here's the figure that really tells the story. If you looked at people on middle incomes, not the rich, not the struggling, the exact middle, the IFS found homeownership among young adults fell from 65% in the mid-90s to 27% 20 years later. It more than halved. That's the group the whole promise was built for. Work hard, earn an ordinary living, get an ordinary home. That deal, for that person, mostly broke. Why? One reason above all the others: house prices ran away from wages and never came back. The Office for National Statistics puts it plainly. The average home in England now costs around 8 times a typical year's earnings. In 1997, it was less than half that. The ratio has more than doubled in a single working lifetime. In London, it's worse. It's been sitting up around 7, 8, even 9 times earnings depending on the year and who's measuring. Now sit with what that does to a deposit. Nationwide reckons a 10% deposit on a typical first home is somewhere around £23,000. And if you're saving a sensible chunk of your take-home pay every single month, they estimate it takes about 6 years to get there. 6 years. That's not 6 years of doing nothing else. That's 6 years of saving hard on top of paying rent, which is the whole trap, because rent is the thing quietly eating the money that was supposed to become the deposit. So when a young person runs that calculation and their brain goes, "This isn't happening in any time frame I can picture," they're not being dramatic. They're being accurate. Economists have a name for the moment people stop adjusting their spending to chase a goal and just abandon the goal entirely. It's the point where the target stops feeling real. And a lot of young Britain has crossed it. But here's where I have to be honest with you, because this channel doesn't do half-truths. The story isn't only getting worse. And if I pretended it was, I'd be doing the exact thing I complain about other people doing. In 2025, something happened that hadn't happened once since records began in 2011. Average rents on new lets actually fell across the year. First-time buyers were the single biggest group of buyers in the market. The price-to-earnings ratio came off its 2022 peak. Mortgage rates drifted down from their highs. On paper, a crack of daylight. So why doesn't it feel like a recovery? Because of who's walking through that door. And this is the part nobody wants to say out loud. More than half of first-time buyers in the UK now get help from their parents. Savills put it at 53%, with families handing over something like £11 billion a year once you count inheritance. Read that again. Buying your first home has quietly become a thing that mostly happens to people whose families already own homes. And the gap it creates is brutal. UK Finance looked at buyers who got family help versus those who didn't. The ones with help put down an average deposit of around £118,000. The ones without, about £61,000. The helped group bought earlier and bought bigger houses, even though, on average, they actually earn less than the people doing it alone. Let that land. Lower income, better house, sooner. The difference isn't effort, it's parents. So the door didn't slam shut, it narrowed. It narrowed down to the people who were always going to be fine. And Gen Z can see that with total clarity, which is exactly why so many have stopped treating homeownership as a normal life stage and started treating it as a lottery ticket they didn't get handed at birth. That's the giving up. And honestly, as a response to those facts, it's rational. But rational isn't the same as safe. Because here's the danger. The house was never really the point. The point was the security underneath it, the forced saving, the fixed housing cost in retirement, the asset with your name on it. And if you give up on the house without replacing what the house was doing for you, you haven't opted out of a rigged game. You've opted out of security itself. Those are very different things, and the rest of this video is about avoiding confusion between them. So let's talk about what young people are actually doing instead. Some of it is genuinely smart. Some of it comes across as coping dressed up as strategy. I'll tell you which is which. The first move is the most common. They're moving the goalposts on where. Barclays found that Gen Z buyers now rank price as the single most important thing about a home, ahead of location and neighbourhood. Nearly 1 in 5 say they'd move 25 miles or more to buy somewhere they can afford. A quarter admit they can't buy where they'd actually like to live. This is the buy where it's cheap, not where it's nice generation. And I'll be straight with you, this one's mostly smart. Geography is one of the few levers left that actually moves the number. If the flat in the city will never happen, but the terrace 2 towns over will, the terrace 2 towns over is a real answer, not a defeat. The second move is renting on purpose and investing the difference. Instead of grinding 6 years for a deposit that inflation keeps nibbling, some are choosing to stay renting for the flexibility and put money that would have been mortgage overpayments into stocks and shares ISA or their pension instead. Done properly, this can genuinely build wealth. The money's working, it's growing, it's yours. Done as an excuse, it doesn't hold up, because most people who say, "I'll invest the difference," never actually invest the difference. They spend it. The strategy is real. The discipline is the hard part. If you're going to rent and invest, the investing isn't optional. It's the entire point. The third one, I'll be blunt about. Some people aren't replacing the house with anything. They've decided the future's out of reach, so they're spending now. The nothing I do matters, so why enjoy it mindset. And I understand where it comes from. When the maths feels hopeless, spending feels like the only thing you control. But this is the cope, not the strategy. It's the one that feels like freedom in your 20s and like a trap in your 40s, when the housing cost never went away and the savings never started. If any of this is landing a bit too close, that's the one to be honest with yourself about. So where does that leave you? Not with a lecture and not with a fairy tale. With this. Giving up on the house might be the sane response to the numbers, but don't give up on the thing the house was standing in for. If the deposit isn't happening, fine. Then the pension is happening, the ISA is happening, and the low fixed cost of living somewhere sensible is happening. You're allowed to walk away from a game that was rigged before you sat down. You're just not allowed to walk away from your own future while you're at it. Opting out of the property ladder is a choice. Opting out of security is an accident. Make sure you only did the first one. Here's my question. If you've quietly given up on buying, what did you decide to do with the money instead? Investing it? Spending it? Or still deciding? Please tell me honestly in the comments, because I think a lot of people reading are in the same spot and don't know it. If this made the picture a bit clearer, Subscribe to Proper Pence and give it a thumbs up so it finds the next person who needs it. And I'll see you in the next one.